What's up, everybody? We are back with another card builder video. This one is for UFC 304 going down in Manchester, England, July 27th for what seems to be possibly a very big pay-per-view event. This is a big deal. The UFC going to the UK, putting on a pay-per-view event. It's already received quite a bit of criticism, right? We've heard about the times of this card and not really catering to the UK fan base, which I think is incredibly disrespectful by the UFC on their end. But nonetheless, I think the UFC is going to try to make up for that and put together a stacked pay-per-view card as they head to the UK here. And there's no mystery, Tom Aspinall is probably going to be the man to headline the card. Will he be defending the interim heavyweight title, which is very strange to me? That seems most likely, so we will go over that throughout this video. But I have put together 6 fights I can see the UFC booking and putting together to create a stacked card when they head to Manchester. But let's head on to the first fight that I have on this builder video. And the first one is Brandon Royval versus Muhammad Mokaev. Now, I know that this might be, whoa. I don't know that we're going to see this soon. The UFC doesn't seem to be too excited about Muhammad Mokaev at this point. And really, I just think that they kind of punished him for that lackadaisical performance his last time out against Perez. I do think that they are going to give him a big opportunity next, right? I don't think that they're just going to blow off Mokaev, but I think that they're going to make him earn the title shot, considering that he's kind of shown that he's quite a bit boring. He's not the most exciting guy like a Steve Erceg, who's striking, his striking is very good. He's hurting people on the feet. Like, that's not what we've seen from Muhammad Mokaev. So that's just his style. But I do believe that we are going to see him step in there against a top guy inside the weight class. And a lot of things are going to kind of depend on what takes place at UFC 301. But I could see this potentially being if Pantoja is able to beat Erceg, I can see if Mokaev is able to get through Brandon Royval, him have another him finally get that title shot opportunity, or Brandon Royval is able to get through an up-and-coming contender with Mokaev, and then he's able to get some sort of rematch with Pantoja, because at flyweight, that's why I think the UFC is very much hoping that Erceg is able to pull it off, because if Pantoja continues to win, we have kind of a stagnant division that it needs some new kind of flow to it. But nonetheless, I think that this is a fun matchup. I think Brandon Royval is scrappy. He's got good striking. I think he would definitely have the striking edge over Mokaev. But nonetheless, this could be that big opportunity that Muhammad Mokaev is looking for, because they weren't going to give him the title shot, even though you could have said maybe he could have gotten it instead of Erceg. I think that this is a matchup that they could look to book. Okay, moving on. We have Arnold Allen and Giga Chikat. Now, I know that there were some rumors that this could potentially be headlining a fight night July 20th, and there were some different things, and we kind of heard that this was in the works, and then there was really nothing after, right? So whenever that kind of happens, we're like, maybe the UFC's kind of putting this together, but they're sitting around kind of waiting, like maybe we could move this to a better place. I don't think that there's a better spot for Arnold Allen right now other than giving him an opportunity to fight in his home, in front of his home fans, man, in the UK against a tough competitor in Giga Chikat, who he's kind of been inactive, right? There's been some ups and downs throughout his career, but we know with Giga, man, this guy he's got some nasty body kicks. He's a very exciting, kind of chaotic striker, so to speak, where we have Arnold Allen, who's kind of that more technical, very clean style of MMA fighter. And I think that this is a great style clash, right? Arnold Allen needs a win. Giga Chikat needs a win. I think this is a sensational matchup. I think that this has like a potential fight of the night type of feel to it. I think this is a great fight, and I could very easily see the UFC throwing this on for UFC 304 in Manchester, because like I said, the heat that they're facing for the times and stuff that they're going to have the card operating on, they're going to probably have to deck out this card, to kind of make up for the scrutiny that they're receiving. That's just my opinion. But, okay, moving on. We have Paddy Pimblett versus Bobby King Green. Now, I know that Paddy Pimblett's like, yeah, Bobby Green's been saying my name. I want Renato Moicano and all these different things. Look, at the end of the day, the UFC is going to do what it takes to protect their stars or the people that are kind of the bigger names in the sport, right? They want those guys winning. It's what the UFC does such a great job of that other organizations don't do the best at, and that is building guys up and protecting them from bad matchups. Renato Moicano, in my opinion, is not a particularly good matchup for Paddy Pimblett. I know Paddy does have some solid power on the feet. He does have some good grappling, some pretty good submissions. But I just think that Renato Moicano is definitely the better grappler, to the point where I'm not so sure about Paddy Pimblett being able to out-grapple Renato Moicano. It's kind of a bigger step up in competition in terms of the rankings. And also, Renato deserves a guy that's basically inside the top 5, right? I know that they're talking about him and possibly Beneil Dariush or something like that. That makes more sense to me because Moicano deserves it. The only way I could see Moicano being like, oh, I'll fight Pimblett is because of the star power, the big name, whatever you want to call it, that Paddy Pimblett has. I think this is the perfect matchup. The reason for that being, Bobby King Green is a good striker, and I do think he's a better striker than Paddy Pimblett. But with Bobby, I've been watching this guy for years, man, even prior to the UFC, and he's always had a super exciting fighting style. But what comes with that is he is very much a 50-50 kill or be killed kind of fighter. Because when Bobby Green steps in there, man, it's kind of a coin flip, and it's going to be a toss-up of whether he's getting got or the other guy's, either Bobby Green's getting knocked out or Bobby Green's not knocking the guy out. So that's kind of how it's been with Bobby Green and his fighting style. It's what makes him exciting. But I think this is a very winnable fight for Paddy Pimblett. And I still would probably lean towards Bobby in this fight. I think he's got the much better striking. But what's very intriguing to the UFC's eye for this fight is that Bobby Green does have a ranking next to his name. I believe he's 14 or 15 at this time. He's coming off a big win against Jim Miller at 300. This is a very marketable fight. Bobby Green will sell it. He'll talk smack. He'll come in there like a G-man, and he'll stand in front of him and bang it out with Paddy. And if Paddy wants to try and take him down, we'd have to see if Bobby can defend. And if Pimblett can go in there and finish Bobby Green, Paddy Pimblett gets a ranking next to his name in front of the UK fan base. That seems like a huge win for the UFC and Paddy Pimblett. I think this is the next fight that makes the most sense for Paddy Pimblett because they want Paddy winning, man. They want Paddy winning. Okay, moving on. We have Michael Venom Page. Now you're seeing the screen. Well, what the hell are you doing here, man? What do we got? A triple threat match? We got a 3-on-1? That'd be pretty wild. But MVP versus all three of these guys in the cage at one time. That's not what we have here. So the reason I'm going to tell you after this slide, we're going to go to the next slide, who I actually think MVP is going to be facing. But I see 3 potential routes here for Michael Venom Page at UFC 304. There's a couple issues, which is why I kind of have multiple people on this slide. One being, they're not going to give MVP a high-level grappler or a Shavkat Rakhmonov or somebody who's really taking people down and mauling them and finishing them. They're not going to give MVP a fight like that until he fights for a title, in my opinion. So that's where I got these 3 names. Now, the issue is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is kind of like that. Well, Captain Obvious, that seems like the perfect matchup to me to book Wonderboy and MVP. However, these guys are friends, they're very cordial, and they both have basically kind of in a way verbally declined fighting each other. They are both not interested in booking this matchup against each other, and they both have said just because we have fun fighting styles doesn't mean when we face each other it'll be the most exciting fight. So then Wonderboy kind of is maybe a possibility, but I think that that's the least likely out of this group. Then I have Gilbert Burns. Now you might say, well, why would they give him Gilbert? Gilbert has good takedowns and this and that. Well, recently MVP's been spotted training with Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I'm not here to speculate and be like, that could just be, oh, well, they were just training together and all those different things. Or it could be that MVP, there's some talks about him getting a shot at somebody basically almost inside the top 5. Gilbert Burns is ranked number 6 at this time. That would be a huge win to where if MVP went in there against Gilbert Burns and beat him, he would get a title shot next, in my opinion. That's basically why the UFC would book that matchup, is he goes in there against Gilbert Burns, who is a little older in his career, definitely does not even have close to the striking that it would take to beat Michael Venom Page. He does have grappling, but when, I don't know. MVP's shown that he's kind of scrambly on the ground. He can stay safe against submissions. I still think that this is a risky fight, but with JDM coming off that win over Gilbert Burns, I see it maybe as an option because Gilbert Burns is close to that top 5, but I'm not sure. And then the most likely scenario that I have here, and we'll just skip to that slide, is MVP versus Jeff Neal. I think that this is probably the most likely matchup. The issue with these matchups, right? And you might say, well, what about Ian Gary? Well, Ian Gary first doesn't sound like he wants to fight MVP. He's been very dismissive there. He's been adamant that he wants to fight at UFC 303, International Fight Week, Colby Covington or somebody along those lines. Maybe there's a weird scenario where they push Gary back or something like that. but I absolutely think they have MVP on the UK card. And Jeff Neal, he's a striker, right? Jeff Neal's got very good boxing, but overall, like, MVP would definitely have the striking advantage in this matchup. They would just basically be feeding him another guy that's going to stand and bang with him. The problem with this, for me, Jeff Neal's ranked number 10, right? And Wonderboy was ranked 9. So those both, MVP's ranked 13 now because his first fight was against Kevin Holland, who had a late ranking next to his name. So that was strategic by the UFC. So job well done there. So check. You got him the ranking. The problem is, to me, it's not a big enough step up into the rankings to warrant a possible title shot with another win for MVP, because they do not want MVP to have to face some of these, like a Balam Muhammad or a Sean Brady or, one of those, Shavkat in this division. And you could say, well, Gilbert Burns is a bad matchup, which, yes, that is true. But Gilbert is a little bit older. He's coming off a loss against JDM. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. And he's a bigger step up into the rankings, considering that he's got that number 6 next to his name. So that's why I laid out those options. But most likely, I see Jeff Neal being the next opponent for Michael Venom Page. Okay. Moving on. Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad 2. I think that the UFC is finally going to book this title fight. And the reason for that being, this is the perfect time for the UFC to book this fight. Because in my opinion, who are we to say now that this isn't a pay-per-view headliner? I think this is a better fight than Pantoja versus Urseg. So to say that this couldn't headline a pay-per-view, maybe that's not fair considering how the UFC is operating these days. But nonetheless, heading to the UK, I don't think that this could really be the headliner. Maybe it could, but I think that they're going to really deck this card out with the rumors of Aspinall kind of being on there. Tom saying, look, I'm going to be on that card, which, it would be hard to believe that Aspinall wouldn't be on it. I think this is a great co-main event. I think that this is a fight that will definitely have some bad blood to it. These guys don't like each other. We know how the fight played out the first time. Looked like Leon Edwards was getting the better of Belal Muhammad on early. He was landing some good shots. Belal Muhammad was kind of starting to push forward, and then Leon, with a really bad eye poke on Belal, the fight has to be stopped. So, and then we've just seen two guys go on a run, man. Both guys have been really good ever since that matchup. We've seen Belal Muhammad just running through the competition at this point. But Belal Muhammad, we like to, everybody kind of refers to him as remember the decision, right? He's not the most exciting guy, but at the end of the day, the guy's a winner. He's been putting wins together, and you could say, maybe they're not the most impressive wins, but he's still winning. His boxing has gotten much better, and we know that his wrestling and his pressure is definitely something that could possibly cause some issues for Leon Edwards. But what we've seen from Leon, man, I think that this guy's going to be the 170-pound champ for a while. He's a rangy guy. He's got very good striking. He's very technical, and he's became one of the real anti-wrestlers in terms of the striking that just does such a good job of fighting the hands, getting rid of these guys that are able to just kind of come in there and maul people. We have not seen anybody really do that to Leon Edwards. You could say in the second Usman fight, which is where the headshot dead got the head kick KO. We saw Usman having success in the grappling, but in the trilogy, Leon looked much better, and we saw how he dismantled Colby Covington. So I would definitely say Belal is better than Colby Covington. I think this is a fun matchup. This has some bad blood to it. I think the fans would be excited considering it wouldn't be the headliner, and it is also a great stylistic clash between these two. While you guys don't like Belal and maybe people don't really like Leon, this is a fun fight nerd type of stylistic matchup. Okay, the main event. No mystery here. Tom Aspinall, and here we go again with my triple threat match. I got a couple names on here, and then we'll go to the next slide, and I'll tell you who I think is the most likely. We have Duck Duck Gone, Curtis. The Blaydes are a little bit dull, and then we have Alex Pineda. So the reason I say the Blaydes are kind of dull is because Curtis Blaydes, he is a very good fighter. We've seen him kind of be a little up and down recently, but he holds that win over Tom Aspinall, which you kind of put an asterisk next to it because Tom Aspinall steps back, blows out his knee. It's nothing really that Curtis Blaydes did particularly, right? So there's kind of already that opportunity for Blaydes to be like, he wants to rematch. Aspinall wants to rematch. I think that this is a very likely option. Seal Gane's been a name out there. It seems like everybody in the heavyweight division's kind of been in a agreement to be like, we're not taking a fight with this guy if you're in the top 5. We're not going to give him the opportunity because he's been ducking contenders, playing these different games. And Seal Gane to me makes sense. He's from France. The UK, not too far. I think that would be, first of all, a style clash between Gane and Aspinall. I need it. I need it. I think that stylistically, that is a really, really fun fight to watch. I do think that Aspinall would have the grappling advantage, but Gon's a pretty striker. He's got the fancy, kind of bouncing in and out movement like his teammate Nasruddin Imavov. I think that's a very fun stylistic clash. However, I think it's not very likely that we see Seal Gon step in there. Maybe I'm wrong. And then the third option I have, if none of this wants to work and the UFC really wants to wow the fans away, or blow the fans away, they call up Alex Poatan Pereira and give him the opportunity to go try to win a third belt to headline UFC 304 in Manchester. I just don't know how likely that is. We heard Dana White say, look, I'd like to see him stay at 205, but at this point, I don't know. Depending on what the UFC wants to do, I think that that's probably the least likely. So I would say Pereira's the least likely, Gon number 2, and number 1, the most realistic matchup I can see the UFC booking for here would be Blaydes versus Aspinall 2. My only issue with this isn't the most fan-pleasing matchup. And the UFC is already under some scrutiny for, like I said, the times and all the different things going on. And this is the first big pay-per-view event really in the UK in quite some time. Like, they're going to look to deck this thing out. So, but nonetheless, interesting style clash, because we saw, like I said, the first time where Blaydes technically has that win over Tom Aspinall. So Aspinall, I'm sure, wants to get that one back. He defends the interim belt, which is weird to me. But if he does that, he punches his ticket to fight the winner of Stipe versus John Jones. As much as I don't want to see that fight, nobody I feel like wants to see that fight. The UFC is so adamant about having Jones versus Miocic. So I don't know what we get there, but I want to hear from you all down in the comments. Like this video, comment your thoughts below. Do you like these matchups, and what fights would you maybe add in? Would you change? Subscribe to the channel, help your boy out. I appreciate you all. See you next time.